Well, it's 5 o'clock and I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment. It's March the 20th, 2023, and we're in the council chambers. Our first order of business after the call to order is the land acknowledgement, and Chad Zimmerman, member of the committee, is going to do the land acknowledgement today.
I'd like to thank the chairperson for this opportunity. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. As I think of my own time in Saugeen Shores since 2010, and as I think about my work career that's been in child welfare, reconciliation is a key part of our being in our family and my being in the chosen career I've had for 20 years. I know that child welfare has actually been a prime contributor to the cultural genocide that Indigenous peoples faced, and the overrepresentation they continue to face in many systems that we have in our area, in our province, and in our country. But I will share a moment that helped me realize how privileged I am to live in Saugeen Shores, and it occurred when my now 10-year-old was about 6 years old. We were watching a baseball game and the anthems came on for the respective countries, and we choose to stand, and everybody will make their own choice about that, but we were standing, and my daughter, who doesn't have a very good voice, sang something that was one of the most beautiful things that I'd ever heard. And at the end, I asked her what I had just listened to because I didn't understand a word of it. And what she told me is that she had just sang our national anthem in Ojibwe. My kids have the privilege of going to GC Houston, excuse me, and this is one of the benefits of living in this wonderful area of Ontario and sharing these lands with the Indigenous persons that were here long before any of us. So as a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people. And we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing alongside with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. I'll now ask if there's anybody who needs to acknowledge a pecuniary interest. You can acknowledge it now or at any point during the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to adoption of the minutes. We have minutes from February the 21st, 2023 on the agenda. I'd appreciate a mover and a seconder. Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt, seconded by Michael Martin. Are there any comments, questions, concerns about the minutes? Seeing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Minutes carried. I have one order or one item to add to additional business on the agenda. It's a committee resolution to appoint Dana Mitchell or designate as the Secretary Treasurer of the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment. If I could get a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Richard Bennett, seconded by Chad Zimmerman. Is there any question about this? All those in favor? I'd like to ask Dana to just turn on her screen and just introduce her. Dana will be joining us at future meetings, and so certainly she'll also be available to respond to any questions you have once the agendas come out, because I know sometimes she'll be the name on the email that comes out. Thank you for being with us, Dana. That she thought I was going to make you talk. Anyway, we have two public hearings or public meetings tonight for two minor variance applications. 6.1 is a minor variance application A-2023-4. It's by Brent Robinson and Tracy Polinsky. The address is 61 Concession 6. We will first receive a report from the planning staff, and then there is somebody in attendance in the chamber who is here specific to this application. If they would like to speak, we'll let them speak. And then if any other members of the public come in on the Zoom, we can have them, and then we'll discuss as a committee. So first, I'd like to ask Karina to make the planning report for this minor variance application.
Good evening. Thank you through you, Chair. I'm just going to get my presentation queued up. Okay, for this evening, I am presenting on a minor variance application. The site is located at 61 Concession 6 in Saugeen Shores, particularly in Saugeen Township. The purpose of this application is to add an extension onto an existing deck, and for that reason, they need to reduce the side yard setback from 20 meters to 6 meters. And this is the site plan showing the property. So they do have an existing deck at the back of the home, and they are looking to extend that deck. And you can see the 6 meter or approximately 6 meter setback to the side. And these are just some photos of the property in the rear yard. And this is the opposite side of the hedge on the adjacent property, just showing that the adjacent lands are currently in active agricultural cropping. So staff did review this application in the context of the 4 tests. We are satisfied that they do meet the 4 tests and that this is appropriate development and use of the land. It does represent good land use planning. And per normal practice, we did circulate out to the various agencies and departments, and there were no concerns expressed. The town has asked for an updated site plan just to show the setbacks to the septic field. So to recap, the applicant is seeking a reduction in the side yard setback from 20 meters to 6, and this will facilitate an extension to the existing deck. The recommendation is that the committee approve the application with the conditions on the decision sheet. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Karina. I'll just now invite okay, we do have somebody in the chamber with us who's to speak. I'll open it up. Someone might have the mic still turned on. I'll open it up now to members of the committee. Any comments or questions? Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt.
The only comment I had, Chair, was, and I'll be supporting this recommendation. I think it's a good use of that property and minor nature. And we're just wondering to the developer who will be building this addition. It's a question of Tim, if I could. Derek, this property is right next to farmland, and with it, we'll bring probably some pesticides and working in the fields, maybe a little bit more dust. And that conversation's taken place with the owner, and it's not going to come back to harm's way in terms of being so close to their addition. Has that ever been? Is that not a really big concern, right? No, I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't go back to haunt anybody later. That's all.
And if you could, Derek, could you just introduce yourself too?
Sure. My name is Derek Holshaw. I am the one that hopefully will be building this deck for the client, for the ones who are on the application. Mike, the point well taken. This is a couple of young kids. Their backyard is used all the time. Their kids are out back there all the time with their little ATVs and everything. So there's no concern on their behalf. They have a hot tub back there and all of that. So in terms of any additional dust or anything like that, they are well aware of that going on.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric. And obviously I'll be supporting this and I think it's good use of that process. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Well, then I'd ask for, the recommendation is that we grant the minor variance. So if I have a mover and a seconder for that, we'll proceed. Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt, seconded by Michael Martin. So the motion is that the application for minor variance from comprehensive zoning bylaw 75-2006 is hereby granted subject to the following conditions: that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw, that the minimum side yard setback is to be 6.0 meters, that the applicant update and resubmit the site plan indicating the setbacks of the deck from the septic tank and tile field to the satisfaction of the chief building official. And 4, that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. And are there any comments? All those in favor? The minor variance is granted. Thank you, Mr. Klusterhoff, for attending. The second public hearing is for minor variance application A-2023-6. It's by Barry's Construction and Insulation Limited, and the address in question is Saugeen Range Lake, Part Lot 46, registered plan 3R9874, Part 1. And I will again invite the planner to make their report.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to share my screen. So this application is for the Northport Meadows subdivision. It is by Barry's Construction and Insulation Limited, and the lands are just located nearby the intersection or just south of Devonshire Road and Waterloo Street. So the applicant is looking to divide the current apartment block within the plan of subdivision into 3 smaller parcels so that each of the 3 proposed apartment buildings can be on separate blocks. So there are reductions in the minimum lot area, the maximum density for all 3 of those blocks, as well as in the central, for the essential part apartment building, there is a proposed reduction in the interior side yard, as well as in the minimum open space. So you can see here as part of the presentation, this is the full draft plan of subdivision. The lands on the far west side have already been approved and are built out. The lands towards the east end of the site, including the apartment block, which is subject to tonight's meeting, is currently draft approved. If these minor variances are approved, it will also facilitate a minor revision to the plan of subdivision to allow for those 3 lots to be created for the apartment building purposes. And this is a site plan zoomed into the parcel with the 3 proposed apartment blocks. And you can see just faintly in red the proposed lot lines for those buildings. I have included some photos in the presentation for tonight. Currently, the lands are vacant, but they are adjacent to existing multi-unit buildings. And this is taken from the Northport Elementary School, which is located to the south of the site. So county staff did review the application in the context of the 4 tests. We do find that it does satisfy all 4 tests and that the application is minor in nature and does represent good land use planning. We did circulate out to agencies and departments. There were no concerns raised by the town, the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, or the historic Saugeen Métis. No public comments were received on the application. We did get a couple of questions, but they were more so related to construction timing as opposed to any concern expressed with the variances proposed. So just to recap, they are seeking a minor variance or several variances to allow for the construction of the 3 apartment buildings and for those buildings to be on separate parcels. We have included the decision sheet and are recommending approval of the application subject to the conditions on those decision sheets. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to take any questions.
Thank you, Karina. I believe we have a representative of Barry's Construction in the meeting. Mr. Doyle, are you interested in speaking?
Thank you, through you, Mrs. Chair. The only thing I'd like to just add is that we did a zoning amendment back, I think it was maybe last August, where we came and did this. Between now and then, all that's changed is, so you can see there's a reduction in the landscaping in the middle one. The 2 outside ones have an increase in landscaping. We haven't really changed it at all. It's just to allow us to reflect the different characteristics of each individual lot now. So overall, everything's the same as it was back in August. All this is reflecting is that we want to create 3 separate lots for the apartment building. So happy to ask any questions. Just want to make that clear. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't see whose hand went up first.
It was me.
Okay, Richard, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to say it's not just parceling it into 3 different lots, is it? It's you're increasing the number of apartments as well, right? There's going to be an additional 12 apartments, I think, in the building. Is that correct?
Correct. I think it was 3 or 4 per unit. I can't remember exactly what came in August, but something like that. Yeah.
Right. So is it that the buildings are going to be bigger, or is it that the apartments are going to be smaller?
The building footprint is not changing. We were just able to change the floor plan on floors 2 through 5 above the main entrance. And then in working with the town, trying to offer some different unit sizes as well.
Right. Okay.
Michael, go ahead.
Madam Chair, this is a question for Mr. Doyle through you. Mr. Doyle, sir, I'm concerned a little bit about building number 2 and the decrease in the minimum open space from 22% to 12%. That, when sort of added to the increase of units of 121 units to 138 units for that building. That's the overall concern. The question I have for you is, what is the relationship going to be between buildings 1, 2, and 3? I realize the percentage of open space is 22% is going to remain, but the division now is such that building number 2 is going to have a substantially decreased amount of open space with an increased number of units. Are the people from building 2, are they going to be able to make use of the existing open space for 1 and 3?
Thanks for the question again through you, Madam Chair. The open space is not changing on the overall lot, as you know. And you had mentioned there that we're going from 122 units to 130. No, we're going from 79 to 82 or 83. So it's not quite as what you were saying, but that's okay. So the intent here, once we get to building 2, there'll be easements placed on all the properties. So the parking, the amenities, everything can be shared between all units. The sole purpose for this is honestly for financing purposes to create the 3 separate lots. So there will be easements over everything for the servicing, the parking, and the open space. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Perhaps for clarification, Karina, I think some of the items in the decision are on the decision sheet about the density. It's units per hectare that's being adjusted.
Okay.
That's not the specific number of units in the building. Could you maybe make a comment about those 3 items on the decision sheet?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, you are correct. That is a density per hectare and not the total number of units on the lot. So that would be what was noted in the earlier portion of the report. So I think the total number of units is 249. I believe it's 83 units per hectare. Or sorry, 83 units per building.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Chad, go ahead.
Thank you. And through the chair, I think that the gentleman that is representing Bears Construction may have answered it. And as I understand it, the only reason to seek this adjustment is for financing purposes. As I understand it, the plan was put forth and approved last August with an amendment, and that's sometime prior to that as well. I'm struggling. I hear that it's not just financing, it's also to put increased units into the buildings, an increase of 12 overall, which obviously I think is critical. I think that one of the larger needs in Saugeen Shores is also rent controlled or affordable housing. And are any of those units going to be specifically for low income housing, or are they all new? So I don't see this as just a financing request. It's also a request to get additional units. And I wonder, I guess I'm struggling on what the value add is overall between the commitment that was made last August and the assets being had tonight, and why this may not have been foreseeable in terms of financing. I'm just struggling to see the overall value add.
I'm not too sure who to direct that question to. I'm looking across at Jay Posner. Jay?
Sure, thank you. And I can answer part of it. Certainly, the number of units has increased since the original approval, but I do want to emphasize two things. One is the overall built form is not different. So in terms of requesting the built form, our review of the additional increase in number of units meant that the additional impacts on the site were negligible. There's no difference. So the built form was important. But in terms of the number of units that are affordable, the developer, and Mr. Doyle can go into more detail, is working with CMHC and is seeking approval for 10% of the units to be qualified for the CMHC funding, which means the units will meet their certain percentage below market rate, which is the way to get funding from CMHC.
Thank you. Stuart, would you like to add anything?
No, I think Jay said it well. Just we're working through, like I said, the CMHC funding right now. There is some criteria in there, and in addition to that, there's also an energy efficient criteria that we have to meet as well. So not only is it attributed to some of the units to rent, but overall the entire building has to meet certain energy efficient criteria as well. So we're working through that program as we speak.
Thank you. Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Stu, for being with us this evening. And you know, Stu, this Saugeen Shores Council has grave concerns about the lack of affordability when it comes to housing and rent subsidies. And I know we're here to talk about the minor variance, and I'll be supporting it, Stu, by the way, but I just think it's important for this community investment committee to hear, you know, what your plans are to work with this community to do with rent subsidies. And talk to us a little bit about CMHC and if the application has been submitted, how favorable does it look? And I know we're talking about the minor variance, but I think it's appropriate when you're here for this committee to hear what you're thinking about when it comes to rent subsidies and for those people in need, because we're in dire need in this community to have new rental units be subsidized. So Stu, you're a willing partner to work with the town. Where are you with that CMHC? What percentage of units could you make available of those 80 some units for rental subsidies? Just talk to us a little bit about that, could you please?
Sure. So to be clear, it's through CMHC, we're not talking about rental subsidies at all. We're dealing with discounted rents from a market rate. So Saugeen Shores or whatever town we're going to work in will have a market rate for rental units. So based with CMHC, part of the application is to meet criteria, we have to be able to show that we're showing a certain discount from the market rate. Now, I I know what Jay had said, I think it's 10%, as I was telling him the other day. 10% of the units have to be certain, I think it's 30% of the median household income now. A lot of that's published data that I have to get through yet. Like I said, I think one of the biggest issues also in Saugeen Shores isn't there's just not enough units out there. And that's what we're really trying to address through this program as well. So we feel we're helping it in a few ways, not only going through CMHC and getting this funding. And, 10 units doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 10 more than we had. And also we're adding 83 new units onto the market with, possibly another 83 the following year. So we're trying our best to get there. It's not always easy, as I've explained before, but we're trying to, and I've said before, we're happy to work with the town on different programs. We just haven't had the opportunities. And you guys are also still moving ahead with different programs where we've had that chance to meet about those yet.
Great, that's good answers, Stu, and Madam Chair. this is a wonderful project, Stu, and 249 units over the next 3 years, we hope. 80, I think bringing those into the market with 0% vacancy rate, I heard 8.9. That's just one of the first developments I've had in recent few years now for rental units. So I think it's great. I guess the question is sod turning. If this is approved this evening, I'll be supporting it. When do you think that the soil will move at this site, Stu?
We are hoping, obviously in about 2 hours, you have another meeting, which will address pre-servicing agreements as well. So if all goes well there, we're certainly hoping to begin work within about 3 weeks. This has been an incredibly ambitious project to get this in the ground as fast as we have. Certainly rising interest rates haven't helped anything at all. So we're gonna forge ahead is our plan, and hopefully by the end of April we'll be having a hole in the ground with some concrete going in. But we need to get the site plan approval and the subdivision approval next month as well. So a few hurdles to get there, but we're working hard at it.
I think just a couple follow-ups there. Block 110 comes first, then Stu, is it 5-story? 5-story building?
Sorry,
How many
block 109 is coming first.
Sorry, yeah. What? How many stories, Stu?
5.
5-story.
Yeah.
Just want to finish with one comment with parkland dedication. And Michael Martin brought this up. Community member Martin brought this up, and I was really concerned about this initially back last August about parkland. It's very high density development your buildings do, and our mayor, I know, and council talked about high density, and the reason I supported back then, we do have, and I want to go on record by saying this to Jay and staff, it gets recorded somewhere. Right beside this development is Wiener Park, and we've got our brand new Lamont Sports Park, and a major diamond will be taken out of there. There'll be 5 or 6 acres made available for future use, and I'm more supportive of this. With I'm not real happy about the 10 or 12% open space, but we do have Wiener Park right beside this development, and I just want to go on record with saying that we have to make sure that neighborhood is looked after. The closest park is Summerside Park, which is a few blocks away, more than a few, and I think we can do something nice at here. So anyways, I just wanted the community to be aware of that there is lands available right next to this development that hopefully we can put a nice park in at a later date as well. Well, thanks again, Stu. This is a great development for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. This development is also a pretty nice, easy walk to the new Aquatics and Wellness Center too, crossing the highway at Devonshire. I had one question for you, Karina, Jay, or Stuart. I don't know who is the best to answer, but I am interested to know how, if 3 separate lots are created to enable 3 apartment blocks on individual lots, is there any issue at all related to the parking lot? Because there are only 2 there's 2 driveways coming in, but it would be 3 lots. Are there any issues at all with any of that?
I can address that.
Okay, Stuart, go ahead.
If you like. So again, what we're going to do is the easements, there'll be easements over each property for access and parking. So building one will not be restricted to parking in that little red area. They'll be able to park in any space. I'm not sure if that's the way the buildings to the north are, but I think it is, where they're parsed off with 3 separate properties or 2, but there'll be access agreements once the second building goes up to cover all those issues: stormwater, servicing, access, parking, everything. So essentially it'd be one site with that completed.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Michael?
Madam Chair, this is a question to you, and I first of all thank Vice Deputy Mayor very much for his comments about Beaner Field. I don't know off the top of my head, Beaner Field has not been listed as surplus, correct? So it's not surplus.
It's not, it is not surplus.
Right. And thank you very much for that, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. And that to me is a huge issue on why I'm going to support this as well. So there will be an awful lot, although it'll be a higher density than what we're used to in this community. The fact is that it's desperately needed, but also there is allowance not only on the property, but more importantly in the general area of green space for the residents there. So I will be supporting this motion. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and Vice Deputy Mayor.
We talked so long that my computer here has timed itself out. So we do have a recommendation, which is why I maybe should ask for printed copies. We do have a recommendation to approve the minor variance, and just give me 1 second. My apologies. The recommendation is to approve the minor variance, and the variance granted, I won't read them all, but that is the recommendation we have to grant it. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt, seconded by Michael Martin. Is there any further discussion? And I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's carried. So the minor variance is granted, subject to the following conditions. This will just take me a second to read through this for the record. For block 109, building 1, number 1, that the minimum lot area shall be 6,857 meters squared. Number 2, that the maximum net density shall be 123 units per hectare. Number 3, that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. Number 4, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw. For block 110, building number 2, number 1, that the minimum lot area shall be 6,048 meters squared. Number 2, that the maximum net density shall be 138 units per hectare. Number 3, that the minimum interior side yard shall be 3.2 meters. Number 4, that the minimum open space shall be 12%. Number 5, the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A, attached to and forming part of this decision. Number 6, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw. And for block 111, which is building 3, number 1, that the minimum lot area shall be 6,801 meters squared. Number 2, that the maximum net density shall be 123 units per hectare. Number 3, that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A, attached to and forming part of this decision. And number 4, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw. Stuart, that sort of finishes that off for this item. It was noted that for the members of the committee that there's another aspect of this that's going to be on the council planning agenda, which is at a meeting following this. So you're all invited to Chad, Michael, or Richard to zoom in and see the second part of this that's on tonight's planning agenda. I'd also like to just note that another thing that might be of interest to members of the committee is that on April the 11th, that council meeting will have a development charges report on it, which may or may not be of interest to members of the committee, you're certainly welcome to zoom in to see that. We have our next meeting date set as April the 17th, 2023, and we will thus adjourn. Oh, sorry, Vice Deputy Mike, go ahead.
Madam Chair, maybe I was sleeping switch. Did we vote on them? Did I do it? I can't remember if my hand up for this motion or not.
Yeah, we did.
I believe we did
Did we?
vote.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
I must have been.
You're making me second guess too. I will say that sometimes it's hard to see the votes on Zoom because you blend into the wall, but all of us tonight, it was very easy to make out the votes. So is there anything else? So the
Madam
next
Chair-
meeting, sorry,
Madam Chair, yes.
go ahead, Michael.
Madam Chair, I just wish to give my regrets for the April 17th meeting. I'm going to be actually on a flight at that time, so I'm not going to be able to zoom in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But I'm sure we'll see you at zooming into some of those other meetings because I know you like to pick up lots of information. Anyway, I'd like to call for adjournment. It is 5:36. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Chad Zimmerman, seconded by Richard Bennett. All those in favor? The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.